So, Joe, it has been reported and I think has gone by the wayside because a lot of this is a lot of legal rigmarole between Florida State and the ACC. But it's something that I do think that we need to talk about here, mainly due to the fact that I do think it's a big deal because we could be getting to a place where potentially the ACC is on the doorstep of being in a situation where, hey, man, this is a lot like the Pac-12 started. Not necessarily like that, but like this, but a lot of teams wanting out. What are your thoughts about Florida State, the ACC, and the legal battle that is ensuing here in Tallahassee?
So the latest update that's happened on this is that the ACC is basically looking for a dismissal on the case. There's a statement that I want to read here that I think is very telling in what the future of everything that's going to happen.
Bring it.
This is from the ACC. The conference thus controls those rights for that term. If Florida State wishes to regain control of the rights, referring to their media rights, before the end of the term, meaning the end of the contract with their current media rights deal, it could attempt to repurchase them. But having to buy back a right which was assigned is not a penalty. It is simply a commercial possibility. I've seen a lot of people interpret this, and this is how I'm interpreting it. The ACC either deliberately or unintentionally implied that if Florida State wanted to negotiate and wanted to not have to pay the $500 or so million in order to get out of this, they could negotiate their way out of their media rights deal, get this down to a more realistic number that they're willing to stomach. I think that this is really a huge first step. There was a little bit of coverage on this over the weekend. Not a lot of diving into the language of the statement that was made by the ACC. But if I'm reading into this the way that it was written, there's an implication here that the ACC is willing to come to negotiations if this thing is dismissed and have a conversation with them, find middle ground, make it $150 million, and then part ways. I think this could be a huge first step.
Can you read the sentence again where it talked about purchasing its rights again?
If Florida State wishes to regain control of the rights before the end of term, it could attempt to repurchase them. But having to buy back a right which was assigned is not a penalty. It is simply a commercial possibility. Commercial is the important word there.
I don't disagree that the language feels like they are trying to negotiate, but I don't think they're going to get to a realistic number where Florida State can pay it. I don't think Florida State can pay $100 million because I think that's their number.
Well, I think that as this was previously rumored that they were going to seek private equity involvement in this whole situation. So $500 million is very unrealistic to get private equity involved. It's not worth the investment, but $100 million could be.
Okay, here's what I think. I think that there's a deep, dark boogeyman sitting in the corner and all this, like we talked about with the college football playoff. Okay, and Joe, to be honest with you, almost a week ago today, we had the conversation, you and I talked about the ESPN deal and how what we talk about is NIL, transfer portal, and then we oh my God, and we do the Olay factor when it comes to TV contracts and the money that's being provided. ESPN, CBS, Fox owns the rights to all of these things and basically owns college athletics. They own college football here. ESPN owns the rights of Florida State. They could easily drop in all of this, but they're not going to because they own the media rights to all of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they don't want to squash anything. I do think it's interesting that Florida State is on the forefront of this. I don't think that they're the only ones having these conversations. I do think Clemson, Miami, North Carolina are others that will secretly watch and see how this goes. Am I the only person on planet Earth that wants to see the ACC survive this?
Why?
Because here's the reason why. I love conference rivalries. I love that college athletics and college sports is different than the NFL. I love for the conference that my team is in And a lot of people say, oh, well, everybody in the SEC just, they think it's the SEC versus everybody. Well, yeah, we have there is a level of conference pride to this because it's the conference that you're playing in. Hey, you can make fun of my school, and as an example, I'll use LSU here. Hey, you can make fun of LSU going for 9-3, 10-3 this year, but they're playing in a conference that's overall better than yours. My thought process is, why can't we be different? Like, why can't we be different? And let me just, for revisionist history here, remind people it wasn't that long ago, and which, by the way, don't really think that we're far from being there, from the ACC being a decent conference in football again. They're instantly better than the Big 12 is here. Okay, they're instantly better at some point at the top tier of these schools. Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt. They're in the playoff. Clemson has won multiple national titles here. I just don't want college athletics to be pushed into what looks like the NFL. Why can't I have that? And then you have Florida State here saying, well, we want to make more money. All right. I can see that you want to make more money. Sounds good. Well, you should have negotiated better. And you know what?
Wait, but they're not the whole situation with all this is because they're not the ones responsible for the initial negotiation. They forfeited the negotiation rights to the ACC to allow them to do that.
You already said everything you needed to say when you said they forfeited their right.
What do you mean? Forfeited their right is not the right term. They trusted, the better way to put it is they trusted the ACC with having the best interest of all the teams in the conference. And I think it's valid, especially, and we talked about this a month ago, it's valid for them to feel disenfranchised by the fact that they're one of the few entities in the conference that is keeping up their brand value of the entire conference. And the shitty teams in the conference, like Boston College, like Georgia Tech, like Virginia, that aren't ever really competitive and will never touch the stratosphere of competing for a national championship, are lowering the value of what they're capably able to make. I don't think it's unfair for them to feel like they're getting screwed. And it was bullshit in the first place that the ACC agreed to a deal that was so favorable for ESPN and Disney because of how long it was. This is one of the few contracts in sports that is as long as it is. Typically, an entity is going to want to have some sort of renegotiation period that allows them to get more money, but they're stuck and locked in on a terrible deal. In Florida State, by the way, that not only are they not making as much money as their competitors, but the competition that they play just costs them a shot at the college football playoff and playing for a national championship.
That's horseshit.
For 1 second, let's forget the fact if we think that they could have won a game or not. Let's remove that for a fact. The quality of play in their schedule was a major factor for them not getting in.
Shit to do with it. Jordan Travis. No, it did not. Jordan Travis going down is the reason why they didn't get in there. Y'all can make that argument all the live long day. Grow up, Peter Pan. That's not why they didn't get in.
It's part of it. It's all a part of it. It's not one thing or the other. It's all of it. It's Jordan Travis and a weak, shitty schedule. Because the argument was that without their starting quarterback, that the argument could have been made that they didn't have enough proof to show that they were dominantly beating everybody or at least winning close football games because the rest of the roster was so good. It's just like how Ohio State with Cardale Jones was able to get in because the argument could have been made for them that they played a tougher schedule.
50-3 in a conference title game with a third-string quarterback. It's not the same.
If
you ever heard the
I'm not rehashing this argument. I'm not rehashing this argument.
Right,
but the whole point is that they are not wrong for believing that the ACC is lowering their ceiling for capabilities and competitiveness.
Interesting, because when I knew we were going to talk about this topic, I went to the highest viewed football games this year for Florida State. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
All right. You ready for this? The two highest viewed games for Florida State this year came against two SEC teams.
Okay.
LSU and Florida.
Yeah.
Were their two highest viewed games. Maybe you're getting the money because outside of you playing teams in the SEC, you weren't a draw like you think you were.
Wait,
So
no, wait. I think you're.
Wait.
Wait.
Hold on. They played Miami, who at the time was ranked. They played Clemson at the time was ranked. So let me ask a question. How is it when you play two ranked teams in an out-of-conference school that you have a higher viewership than versus two ranked opponents that are in your conference who, by the way, are rivals?
Because there is a lack of priority by ESPN. This is so low down on the totem pole.
Miami on ABC. It was a primetime game.
That wasn't an ABC game, was it?
Yeah, it was an ABC game at night. And then you want to know what else they did? They put Florida State and Duke on ABC too.
That one was on ABC. Wait, Florida State, Miami.
It was on ABC.
But this needs to be brought up, though. This plays more. I can't figure out what channel it was on. This plays more into what I'm talking about here, is that nobody wants to play Florida State, play nobodies. They can't make money playing the teams that are inside the conference. Their biggest draw is when they play teams outside of the conference. They are being hampered and handicapped by the ACC.
No, if you were the draw that you think that you were, because let me ask you a question. How is it that LSU and Florida State is one of the highest viewed games when other teams, big time programs, hold on one second, other programs, okay, regardless of the conference that they're in, why does Ohio State play Oregon and it's one of the highly viewed games? Because their brand dictates it. Now, that doesn't stop where I do agree that the deal probably isn't favorable to them. I'll concede. I 100% agree with that. But
before you move on here, it needs to be talked about that, yes, there is a considerable bigger draw from when they play SEC opponents. I understand that you're trying to make the point that they are not as big of a draw as we think. But I would love to know the breakdown of Florida State fans versus Clemson and Miami fans that watch those games. Because Miami, I think a lot
won't even show up to the games.
That's my point, is that Miami fans don't care or watch the games as much as they make it seem like they do. And Clemson fans were weird this season. So what I'm trying to get at here is that there is all of this attention by Florida State fans.
Don't you dare make fun of Tyler and Stettenberg.
Spartanburg. The whole big point here, though, Blake, is that I would love to know what the opposing team fan base's involvement when they played Florida State with their draw is. There's enough proof there that if they were
Florida State goes into Florida and it's a sellout Ben Hill Griffin Stadium.
Yeah. There's enough proof there that if they played in the SEC, they'd be making a shitload more money because all of their games would get a lot more attention.
I'm not saying that it's a money thing. What I'm saying is, and I agree that they want to make more money, but they've signed over their rights. I don't know what to tell them. Pay the money and leave. I mean, it is as you know why the SEC, and we talked about this. I think this is a deeper issue. Now, here's the thing that I'll concede and start getting into this instead of arguing with you. I'll concede, okay, the SEC and the Big Ten kept out the ACC and the Big 12 when they formed their agreement because ESPN is telling them, hey, this is what we want. The ACC's left out of it for a reason, okay? But, Joe, if Florida State gets out of this, are they going to be the only ones to leave? And are other teams and other programs going to be able to spend that much money?
I think realistically, Miami, maybe North Carolina, probably Miami and Clemson can spend the money to leave, but realistically, maybe nobody else, maybe Miami.
Well, ESPN could end all of this if they really wanted to. Like if they really wanted to, they could end all of this. Now they'd have to pay the ACC and the conference. I'm so bullish on, and I understand that it's a money grab thing, okay, but why? I don't know. I know how I feel and not wanting to change and I know it comes at a Florida State expense. But I think that this is a deeper issue that I'm trying to get at, that I try to hammer this, and it's not a Florida State thing. Now, Florida State fans will get mad at me behind all this. I'm not mad at Florida State for doing what they think is best for them. I'm mad that you have realignment changing the sport and ruining the sport to some extent the way they're ruining it.
I don't think that realignment is ruining the sport. This sport has been around for so long.
In the ACC in 2024, Stanford. It all comes based off of ESPN and realignment.
But I think that what's ruining it more is poor decision-making by the conferences in how they're pursuing their futures.
So you are what you're worth.
I think that we're at a point now where the sport has been around for so long that we know which teams are spending the most money and are producing the most competitive programs. It's been the same teams for over 100 years. I don't think that there's, and I'm not picking one side or the other. I'm indifferent. If this is the path that we're going to get on, where ultimately the most aggressive teams and the ones that want to win the most and put the most money into succeeding, if those are the ones that converge on two conferences, so be it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that, because all that is going to happen for us, Blake, is yes, does it change tradition? Does it kill tradition in a way? Yeah, it does. But does it give us more competitive football games? Does it create a more competitive landscape and a more interesting debate instead of us trying to figure out if one win over a team in their conference is more valuable than another team's win over in their conference? If this is the trajectory that we're going on, it's capitalism. We can't stop the fact that they aspire for it.
I don't blame them. But legally, you're going to have to pay to get out. Bottom line. And if you want to leave, pay your happy ass on the way out. I don't know why this is a bigger story than it is. You want out, pay your way out. You know why? You know what Texas did? Hey, can I give you just a little, you know what Texas and Oklahoma did?
They paid.
And they shut up about it. They didn't say shit. You know what they did?
Wait.
Hold on. Remind me how Texas, Oklahoma went down.
There was a difference in the timing, though, because the new media rights deal was almost up for the Big 12. So the amount that they had to spend,
and they owed how much money to get out?
It was like $100 million.
Okay. So again, the deal being up doesn't change. They still had to pay the money to get out of it. If they want to get out of it.
But the amount is different. The amount is different, though, because there's so many years away.
You opened up this segment saying that the ACC wanted to negotiate. You want me to tell me they won't take $100 million?
That's what I'm trying to say here. That's what I'm trying to get at here, is that this is the big piece in all of this, is that they opened the table for negotiation, and I bet Florida State is going to make the argument of Texas and Oklahoma just paid $100 million to get out of the Big 12 to go to the SEC. We're going to spend the same amount of money.
No one's saying, Antonio, for them to pay $572 million to get out of it. I'm just saying what was being reported about the $100 million thing. Okay. Joe, what do you want me to say?
Someone dropped feudalism in the comments, and I'm like,
bring it up. It's not capitalism, it's feudalism.
Feudalism.
What is feudalism?
Feudalism's okay. I looked up an exact definition. The dominant social system in medieval Europe, in which the nobility held lands from the crown in exchange for military service, and vassals were in turn tenants of the nobles, while the peasants were obliged to live on their lord's land and give him homage, labor, and a share of their produce. Basically, though,
sounds like college football without an agreement with their players.
RX is hilarious. This is so goddamn funny.
So let's talk about this. Okay, yeah. Let's get to what we probably should be talking about here.
Okay,
is Florida State gonna? And we can clip it from here. Is Florida State, with all this stuff going on with the ACC, are they about to join the SEC in your opinion?
I absolutely believe that they are. I really, really do think that this is the next cog in the next wave. in them eventually joining the SEC,
So
or it could be the Big Ten.
He is lying when he says he does not want to add any more teams.
How many times have we heard conference commissioners say random shit to say shit? They're not going to be forward about it.
Well, when he was trying to add Texas and Oklahoma, he was completely different than what he said versus what he's saying now. That's the reason that I asked, because when it was brought up and the rumors started about Texas and Oklahoma before it was broke at SEC Media Days, he said that he's always looking for the advancement of the conference. Now he is saying we are not expanding more than 16 teams. Like, he's being pretty definitive here is why I ask. Like, because why would he be so bullish in saying that we're always looking to add on and grow our conference for Texas and Oklahoma, but not do the same for Florida State? Now,
because
in 2 weeks, he could change what he says, and that fine. We'll revisit it then. But right now, it seems like he doesn't want Florida State.
Well, this is all a very political circumstance, which is why I think that you say the right thing at the right time that people want to hear. And you're always going to see administrators, coaches, commissioners always changing what they're saying. He might be being definitive, but again, as I mentioned earlier, the timing was different. There was a potential out for Texas and Oklahoma to get out a year or so early. And here is the same with, or not the same with Florida State, because it is so many years away that it is going to cost them so much money that this could not come to fruition, and they could not be able to leave. So he's not going to make a statement saying that and saying that they're looking to add teams, because some could argue that there's some form of tampering or some form of what's the word I'm looking for, that it's not in the I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. An unjust description or an unjust weigh in on the situation could imply that he is trying to convince Florida State and help them move on, which could be a violation of their contract with the ACC. So his stance could eventually change after we know where the direction of this is going.
I do think it would make some sense to add them, but not alone. And I think that they're gonna have to bring somebody else with them.
Probably now, Miami.
I ask, what is the appetite for Miami?
I mean, that's a good question. I think that Clemson would provide more competitiveness. Historically,
what's the appetite for Clemson? You know, I mean, you have to start asking yourself the realistic nature here too, Joe. What if Florida State wins this and nobody? I'm not saying nobody wouldn't want them, but do you really see a conference with an odd number of teams? Do you see the SEC with 17 teams? Do you see the Big Ten with an odd number of teams?
Probably not. I realistically know.
Oh, okay, so then I start asking the question, is it in the best interest of Florida State to move at the current moment?
Yeah, I still think that it is.
What if I'm not saying what if nobody wants you, because they will go to a conference if they want to, and somebody will do it. I just don't know if I can see the SEC or Greg Sankey doing that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, my counterpoint to that is, do you think Florida State would go through all this trouble if they didn't know that there was something on the table?
Yes.
Why? I don't really agree with that.
Can I be honest with you? I think Florida State, and look, I know our buddy TJ's in here. I think Florida State has shown at times that they can be poorly run. It wasn't that long ago, even with Mike Norvell before the portal, we were saying back-to-back head coaches started failing there. Okay, from a college football's perspective.
Okay.
It wasn't until the portal happened and Norvell started kicking everybody's ass that it was a difference and things started to change there. All I'm asking is there a realistic chance where this could backfire on them?
I don't think so, because I think that both the Big Ten and the SEC would be excited to add a team that has historically, in the history of college football, been a very competitive, good football team. And then on top of that, has a very passionate fan base. Miami, the argument's going to be a lot harder.
What if NBC comes in here and takes on another team and they go independent?
That I think actually is possible. I mean, we forget that Florida State was once an independent.
Could be very possible. Now they won't be able to ever be the number 1 seed. They'd have to have the same rules applied to them as Notre Dame does. But I do think that is something that is very interesting here, Joe.
BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number 1 source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.